First hand comes while we were still at the must move game. The main game was the game that I was kind of talking about, how everyone was just kind of doing their thing with headphones on and what have you, but still in the must move here. And the under the gun +1 player opens for 40. And I guess I can say he's a limit player who was having some cocktails, seemed to be just kind of having a night out, so to speak. There's an early middle position player who calls, who is a reg. I call just behind him with king queen offsuit, and there are 2 more calls behind me. So we go 5 ways to a flop. Flop seems mostly favorable. Flop is king queen 9 with 2 clubs. So we flop top 2 pair. The initial raiser puts out a c-bet of $300. Overbets the pot. The middle position player thinks for a little while and then he calls. So already a very weird, unusual situation here. Top 2 pair on a connected wet board. 2 other people behind yet to act, and the initial raiser showing a lot of strength, and middle position player showing decent amount of strength by calling an overbet. So not too sure what the best line on the flop is, but I just decided to flat call and just kind of evaluate as the hand unfolds, see what happens behind me and on the turn. So I call, and the 2 players behind me fold. 3 ways to a turn card, which is a total brick. The initial raiser shoves all in, but he's got $700, so not really an overbet. Jams all in for 7, maybe 750, something along those lines. Middle position player goes into the tank a little bit and looks at my stack and is thinking it over, and then he decides to go all in as well. So he covers me, and I have about 1150-ish at this point. Pretty interesting spot. Top 2 pair. I feel like my hand could be a little bit under repped. Maybe not, because the c-bet was an overbet of $300. So he can never be bluffing, obviously, because he has to win at showdown versus the initial raiser. The problem is that the hands that we beat, that he could maybe have in his range, we block. So we block queen 9, we block king 9, and we don't block jack 10, and we don't block pocket 9s. That makes it somewhat close of a situation. Top 2 just feels good, you know, feels good to flop top 2 pair. It's a question of whether he has queen 9 and king 9 in his range. And thinking back, after I made my decision, which was to call, and without even thinking about it for too much for some reason, thinking back on it, I don't think he has enough hands in his range to merit a call here. He has to A, call with queen 9 and king 9 from middle position versus an early position raise, and we also block those hands. He somehow has to still have those hands after we are blocking them. I think it should be a hero fold here in this situation, after thinking about it after the fact. Perhaps not even because it's a results-oriented way of thinking about it, because as it turns out, initial raiser has pocket queens, middle position player has pocket 9s. We're pretty murdered here. We're not completely dead, but it's a pretty bad situation. So not a real big fan of my call here. Like I said, mainly for the reason of us not blocking the hands that beat us, and only blocking hands that we can still beat, and it's unlikely that he called with those hands pre-flop. So sometimes I think that I don't make good adjustments when I go from, say, a 2-5 to 5-10, or a 5-10 in one location such as California, where there just generally is more action, to a 5-10 in Las Vegas, where ranges are a little bit more snug on average, I would say. So I don't know, don't love my call. Board, we run it twice, board bricks out twice for me. So initial raiser triples up, the middle position player wins a small side pot for me, and yeah, I'm off to a pretty rough start in this session. Whacked right after the bat, and I think it's a mistake. Next interesting hand comes with me looking down at ace king offsuit, and I raise it up to 30 from under the gun +1. Player in early middle position makes it 70, and this player is a very recreational and very admittedly so recreational. Often talks about how happy he is to fuel the games, so to speak. Just enjoys his time there and has had a very successful life. Doesn't care about money, you could say. So I only point that out for reasons you will see. And by the way, this is after the fact that the terrible game had kind of gotten much better, you could say. So anyway, there are 2 cold calls behind him from the button and the big blind. So when he 3-bets to 70 and these other players cold call, it should be pretty evident that they don't have that strong of a hand, because once they see that he puts in the 70, if they have a premium, they're looking to build up the pot and really play a big pot with him. So anyway, they cold call, and I'm looking to put in a pretty decent 4-bet size here. Try and thin the field, try and give some poor odds to players who are looking to set mine and, you know, flop favorably versus the 3-better. So I make a 4-bet and I make it $340 to go. The 3-better in middle position snap calls. The next player folds and the big blind thinks for a little while and then he makes the call. So we're going 3 ways here to the flop in a already fairly bloated pot. The flop comes 10-8 for rainbow. So the big blind checks, and unfortunately we whiff here. The other piece of information that you need to know is that the middle position player only has about 550 or 600 maybe at this point behind. So having whiffed the flop, and with him having a pretty short stack to pot ratio, I guess there's merit in c-betting. There might be some merit to it. Maybe the middle position player was playing this hand fit or fold, and if he has, say, a medium pair, like, I don't know, 7s perhaps, maybe he will be able to just let it go, and that could be an example of a better hand that will fold to a c-bet. But all that being said, with ace-king, turning it into a bluff, I'm not sure would make the most sense, because with this player type in middle position, facing a bet with that much money in the pot, not too sure he's gonna be looking to fold pocket 7s here. So don't really love a c-bet, and for unknown reasons, I decide to c-bet. I bet $420. Middle position player thinks for a while, but then he folds. So that's some good news. The big blind, however, snap calls right away. Calls immediately, and we're off to a turn card. Turn card's pretty favorable, offsuit king. So full rainbow on board, and we make top pair, top kicker on the turn. So he checks it over to me, and at this point, I think it's a straightforward bet. Maybe he could have Jack 9 suited or something. There's a couple draw potentials there, straight draws out there. So looking for some value, I decide to put out a bet on the turn, and I bet $680, which leaves me a little over 800 behind. At this point, the big blind decides to jam all in for my remaining $800 to $850. Pretty miserable spot. The pot is now huge compared to what I have behind. Not a great situation. Just not loving it. Not loving the situation that I put myself in here. Hate my c-bet. Now that we've hit one of the best cards in the deck for us, feels like our hand is much better now. Feels like it's much more towards the top of our range. And with that little amount left compared to the pot size, coupled with the fact that I think this player is capable of making some different moves. I played a decent number of hours with him before. In another video, he showed up with Queen 6 of spades or something or other when he opened from early position or early middle position. So he might not have the most snug of ranges out there, but what does he really beat here? What does he hope to accomplish here? If I happen to have pocket queens, pocket jacks, something along those lines, am I really gonna bet this turn card? Is he gonna push me off of that type of a hand with some sort of amazing bluff? I think I just got really lost in the hand between having the middle position player in there and me making a rather questionable c-bet on the flop and building a huge pot to this point and having relatively not much money left behind. So I call it off, decide to call it off, and we're drawing dead. The moral of the story is we're drawing dead to pocket 10s. So this session, to say it's going poorly is a rather big understatement, and it's pretty much all my fault, I guess you could say. I pretty much only have myself to blame for it. Lots of head shaking in this session going on, really.